Southern states have long grappled with the issue of the Confederate flag. What do you do? Celebrate it as a part of the South, acknowledge it as a part of history, or move on from it because of its troubled nature? It's an age-old controversy popping up again because of a new push to ban Confederate memorials on certain property. The Civil War, a fight between North and South, a core and contentious issue, slavery, according to Dr. Frank Baglioni, a Tallahassee Community College history professor.
So the battle was over expansion of these two systems, slave or free. That's where the real political tension began. So it's related to slavery in the sense of which economic system was going to spread into the territories.
The war ended in 1865 with Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendering. Through the war, soldiers carried battle flags like the one flown by General Lee's army in Northern Virginia. And today, that Confederate flag still ignites passion and controversy.
Naturally, people in the South who had strong feelings and people had given their lives. Approximately 250,000 Southerners died in the war, and many more were wounded. And it was, for the Southerners, was a great sacrifice. So the flag was symbolic to them as their lost cause. And there it remained. But when the Ku Klux Klan, actually not originally, but when it was revived in the 1920s, they started using the Confederate flag as their symbol. So it became associated with the Klan.
South Georgians are mixed when they see the Confederate flag.
I just think of the history of the South. I don't really connect it with racism or anything, so it's just kind of like taking pride in the South and the Confederate side of the Civil War.
I feel that it's a little racial, but it's okay. I can't make people not carry it or not use it, but I feel that it's racial.
You see the flag in people's yards, on license plates, and at one point the cross and stars were even on the Georgia state flag. The last Confederate flagpole in the country is even standing in Blakely, Georgia. But it's not just the flags that serve as a reminder of heritage to some and racism to others. It's Confederate memorials of soldiers at courthouses that upset people like Mark George.
But we don't think the state should be using taxpayer dollars to celebrate men who wanted to preserve and expand slavery, and men and a government that thought white people were superior to all other races and should be in charge of them.
He and the leader of the Valdosta chapter of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Reverend Floyd Rose, launched an effort in the summer asking lawmakers and the governor to ban the memorials on public property. George worked at Valdosta State University when the initiative began, and when VSU alumnus John C. Hall caught wind of it all, he got involved. The member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans said he's not going to stand for this.
You want to tear all this down? Well, what about the rest of us? What about the family members whose descendants were the descendants of these men were not cowards, they were brave.
But George says he has plenty of options to make sure the monuments in Georgia are moved.
So these private heritage organizations, in fact, one of our suggestions is give them these monuments that are on state grounds, as long as they incur the cost of moving them and they put them on private property.
Hall says the monuments should stay right where they are. They remind him of his Confederate ancestors.
I mean, that's my ancestor right there. That's Stephen Alcestis Corker. And he was in the 3rd Georgia. The 3rd Georgia flag is at the Capitol. It's in tatters. It had been shot so many times and blown up. I've gotten to know this man. He was a lawyer fighting for the South. And it's just a part of your family. And that's why I'm really touched by Confederate stuff. And it really boils down to love for my grandmother and my family.
Mark George did send his request to Georgia Governor Nathan Deal and received a letter asking him to contact state legislators. George says it's not just Georgia where he wants the memorials removed. He wants them gone across the South. And if you have a comment or story suggestion for the Insiders, send us a note at ABC27news@WTXL.TV. Attention Insiders.